All right. Hi, Matt from Modern Samurai here, and today I've got with me Martyn from Aikido Bastards. How you doing, mate?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to finally actually meet. So we've been in contact, obviously, on and off for quite a while now, and it's been really interesting the fact that there are all these different people out there all trying to explore and find better ways of doing things. So, and that's really where we sort of came into contact. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself first, as to who you are?
Yeah, very quickly. I'll do the boring bit about me very quickly. So, martial art experience-wise, started boxing, kickboxing at a young age, sport fighting, not like belts or anything like that. Had 7 fights, won 4, so never going to set the world alight, but slightly better than I lost. Then went into Chinese martial arts. Predominantly Wing Chun was a big part of that, but some other bits and bobs around there. And from that then went into Aikido. So I've been doing it on and off since the age of 13. The last 10 to 12 years have been mainly focused on the Aikido world. That's my martial history, and then outside of that, sort of conflict history, I suppose, a better way of describing it would be door work. Did that for 4 years, again in 2 main venues. One was a rock venue with like a pub with a rock nightclub on the back of it, and one was a nightclub in the centre of Oxford. And then following that, being a serving police officer, very frontline based, always been uniform, so response, public order, so the riot training, specialist stuff within that around evidence gathering and forward intelligence work. Firearms, we had a lot of time with the firearms units, again doing stuff around protection work, arm response work and sort of CBRN firearms work, and then have gone through ranks and roles where, although I'm currently in a role where I don't necessarily go hands-on with the public anymore, I'm still very much in response to using force and the accountability of force use. So to some degree I've always been around that sort of world, and that's what's interested me. And again, what's interested me now is looking to expand on Aikido, which is why I came across and found yourself. And the bit that really intrigued me was actually your logo and your thing, your no egos and no shoes.
Right, okay, yeah.
I like that. That for me says it's someone that is open to ideas and open to making things better, and not looking to get one-upmanship or something like that. It's actually, there's benefit to be had by looking to explore people with your level of experience, and hopefully we can share stuff, and you'll learn stuff and I'll learn stuff, and it makes it better. And that's kind of where I ended up sort of finding you and ending up here, really.
Yeah. Awesome, absolutely right. So it's funny how that particular little sign there is sort of it resonated with me as well. Actually, when I first sort of looked at it, and it was like, actually, that's a really good sort of thing, and it kind of sums up the message, if you like, overarching with that. So so a little bit quickly about me then, just for those that haven't sort of met me before. So long story short, I started martial arts in the late 80s. I did some boxing, some judo. I then went into karate, which I did for a long time. I did some Japanese jiu-jitsu, done some wrestling. Got into all kinds of combatives and Krav Maga and things like that. I own multiple black belts. I've competed to a pretty good standard. I hold world championship gold, silver, bronze medals, national titles, da-di-da-di-da. I spent many years working as a bouncer and a bodyguard, so I've dealt with it, all that side of it. And what I find really interesting is when I talk to very specific martial artists, and this isn't to disrespect anyone, but when I talk to very specific martial artists that really only have martial arts within their sort of repertoire and their resume, I tend to find those guys a little more focused on the very specific elements of what they do. But what I tend to find is people like yourself, who's got a much more rounded sort of history, but also real application, also a job role and a lifestyle, if you like, that has put you in front of real violence and everything else. Now, what I tend to find with that is those people and those guys, they're actually really open to questions, they're really open to knowledge, they're really open to learning, and they're far more, I think, far more receptive to looking at different ways of doing things. And I do believe that's kind of one of the reasons why we're now sat here chatting to one another, because we both have that kind of mindset. So I'm interested, first and foremost, in a couple of things. So if I can just sort of ask the questions as we think of them. The first question that comes to mind is that you said now you're predominantly training in Aikido, but you've gone through all these different things. So why Aikido?
The first thing was locality. Again, like everything, you get middle-aged man with wife, kids, and all that stuff. The time you've got to allocate to training is limited. I initially came to it, I'd seen the Steven Seagal, the show Aikido, and it always looked quite flashy and quite. We had, with my Chinese school, a couple of guys who had done Aikido, and again, some of the stuff I quite liked. You know, some of the wrist locks, some of the stuff. When they come on, they're very effective. And I thought, there's an element there that it could be effective. The club was literally walking distance to my house, so I've started walking there and just started training with it. Now, again, I love Aikido. I think it's a fantastic art. However, what has led me to this is actually wanting to fill some of the gaps that I think Aikido has. And I'll probably upset a lot of people in the community. People say, it doesn't need changing. Who am I to change it? And I'm not looking to change Aikido. I'm looking to enhance my Aikido. And if there's some people who come along for that ride, that is brilliant. That's kind of where I led to Aikido. I mean, again, one thing I'm very good at is about being honest. It's not trying to sell a racehorse and deliver a donkey. When people come and look to train with me in my club, if they said to me that I want to learn something that's going to turn me into, I need to be street smart and savvy very quickly, and really, I'm going to be going off to central London and it's going to be really violent, I wouldn't advise them. I wouldn't say, actually, Aikido is a perfect art for you. You're going to be safe. You're going to be, out you go. What I would say to them is, you will get bits of it that can be used for that. There are, it's good fun. You get a little bit of fitness from it, not loads. But I'll be honest about what I'm telling them. You're getting a traditional martial art. You'll learn some traditional stuff. There will be bits you can take, and if you learn to adapt it, you can make it work better on the street or the real world. And I think that's the key element for me is, can I take bits from that and make it work? And that's where I've kind of plateaued, because up until about 2 years ago, I'd done up to the Shodan, so I'd done 10 years, got my Shodan, first dan in Aikido, and I was a little bit like, what's next? And for me, Shodan's when you start to learn your art and actually start to learn it for yourself a bit more. And I was then thinking, where's this path going to take me? And as I was looking around, there was very little outside the traditional world. It was still just traditional stuff, done harder, faster, but that was it. Knowing what I know, knowing the scraps I've been in, I wasn't convinced that just doing that harder and faster was going to make me any more competent if I got into a conflict. So that's where I'm now in the situation of exploring how to go further. And about 2 years ago, I think there was a little bit of a revolution in Aikido. We had a lot of bad publicity where we don't help ourselves out as an art. There's a lot of misunderstanding with Aikido within our own community. We can't get the message right. There's people arguing in our own community about what is Aikido, what isn't Aikido. So how can we expect people looking in to actually even understand it if we don't even understand it ourselves? Okay.
So you were saying about the Aikido then and the different sort of factions of that, and again I find that really interesting, because I don't think there's an art alive that doesn't have factions and that doesn't have different interpretations and different people claiming that their version of things is somehow above and better than somebody else's. I think it's really worth clarifying at this point that none of us are here to dismiss Aikido or the art of Aikido or the techniques of Aikido or anything to do with Aikido. In fact, what we're actually trying to do is to try and highlight the values within that. Speaking for myself, I'm a firm believer that no one art has all the answers, but I'm also a firm believer in no art is worthless. They all have value in their own way. So with that in mind, when you were talking about that just a moment ago and you were saying the different factions and things like that, now obviously we have people that we both know, such as Tristan, things like that, who are also trying to explore different ways of that. But then you also have, how can I put this politely? I would almost claim it as a sort of a physical Aikido and a mental Aikido. I think that's probably a good way of explaining that. Is that a fair way?
I know exactly the versions you're talking about. I think the problem starts with what Aikido wants to be. I think Aikido's got a very lofty goal, which is admirable. O-sensei was, subject to the war. He saw a lot of violence, probably more violence than we'll ever see. I think rumours where he was in firing lineups and didn't get shot. So he's seen that horrible side of war and conflict. And I think what he did, he developed Aikido from the basic arts that he knew, judo, jiu-jitsu, all the traditional stuff. And his aspiration, I think, was a martial art that people could use, would have that Budo spirit, that pride you get from being a martial artist, which I think is very key and important, but actually something that wasn't destructive fully. Now, people say, Aikido's the art of peace and love your opponent, all this stuff. I think that's where the message has gone skewed. And I think the big thing is, and again, I'm no historian, there's people out there better at it, but he didn't leave a great legacy in the way he didn't like structure his, you speak to people who talk to him, he would just turn up and teach what he wanted on a lesson. He didn't really have a structure or a plan. all his weapon katas have been developed by people, his students after him.
Right.
So I think the problem was he had a very lofty goal, which is admirable. He was very competent, you know, the evidence is there, you know, some of his videos toward the end are people throwing themselves around when he does stuff, but you watch some of his earlier stuff, he's clearly very strong, clearly very capable, and lots of experienced people, you know, the judo community very much paid reverence to him.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have done that if he wasn't.
Yeah, I think just to interject on that, I think that's a really valid point, because when we're looking at the world now, we're looking at it from our point of view, from a Western point of view, in the in the 2000 nearly 2020s.
Yeah.
When we go back to a time where O-sensei was training and teaching, then the whole society was a completely different thing. The world was a completely different thing, and you know, they didn't necessarily have the cushion to violence that some of us guys have now. So it was a completely different world, and also, like, one of the things that's worth pointing out is, as you rightly said there, he had the respect of other very senior, you know, well-respected martial artists, and I think that speaks volumes by itself, because he wasn't poo-pooed, he wasn't disregarded, because there's that element now of people that will sort of, if you like, almost take the mickey out of Aikido, and it's almost got that sort of level to it a little bit by certain people. But it didn't start that way, and those elements really have kind of maybe not been lost, but maybe it's a case of almost like Chinese whispers, you know, every generation that goes forward takes forward their version of it, and maybe it loses a certain element of where it first came from.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
I would definitely say that. And again, I think social economy, like the boom town is here, and people want to do martial arts, but not many people want to get hurt and battered. And actually, most people, we do martial arts and you think, oh, it's for self-defense, and you say to them, well, when was the last time you had a fight? When was the last time you had conflict? And most of them haven't, which is good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. And again, of course, I think, you know, so I think Aikido is naturally attracted. People who like the idea of martial arts, they see Aikido as a good one because they don't really get hurt. Most of the clubs aren't doing decent strikes, realistic strikes, which is one of the main things we're going to come to, I think. And as a result, they can build that level of confidence without really putting themselves in too much danger, I think. And as that's become profitable, I have no doubt people have then gone, well, there's an element I can make money from this, we can spread. And it's a nice message. It's a bit like Tai Chi. You know, Tai Chi is a traditional Chinese martial art. You ask most people on the street and they would say, oh, it's like almost meditative movements done in a park. Yes, that is an element of Tai Chi, but it's been so watered down that actually you probably struggle to find traditional Tai Chi martial art clubs nowadays. Everyone tends to struggle. I think Aikido's gone that way. The more popular element of Aikido is the turn up, have fun, deal with the fairly limited attacks. A lot of people have fascination with sort of ki energy, and there's been a whole recent videos between Corky and Tristan and that stuff where it was very much, let's work on this ki connection, which again is a lovely concept. And there's a lot of concepts like it. Aikido has got lovely concepts, but when you make them practical, often the concepts fall apart. And for me, that's where, you know, can I take a real concept, can I make it practical? And I think that's where some of that falls down. And the key one is a big one for me.
So there are several questions within that particular strain there that I'd like to ask, but we can't really avoid the obvious one which you ended with, which is ki energy. And so do you have a specific sort of standpoint on
my personal view?
On
Ki energy for me is, I've done from the good. We had it in Chinese martial arts, had it as well. They had Qi and all that stuff, and we have it like Ki and Aikido. For me, it's just I define it as that moment when everything works, everything connects in your body. It's, you know, my best example, powerlifters. Okay, they powerlift, they train for the big powerlifting contest. When do they do their personal bests? On the day of that tournament. Up until that week, they've probably been healthier, been sleeping better, been training harder, eating better, anything like that. Yet on the day something changes and they smash out their personal best. It's because all the factors come together. Your adrenaline kicks in, your body everything just lines up properly. For me, that's a bit like ki. It's not something I can turn on. You know, you practice with it. I don't believe there's any mystical power that comes from the universe through me. I control that. For me, it's ki. It's, you know, you grab me, you're giving me energy. I respond to that energy. Now, I don't think that I can, you know, softly divert it and change it around. For me, it's a nice idea. But again, the idea falls down when you start to practice it. But you can, for me, you can build from that idea. If you grab me and are trying to push me backwards, well, actually, common sense says if I push against you, it's going to be force against force. If I can divert force into a different direction, it's going to be more effective. So for me, that's sort of the key word. I don't think it's a misclengy. I don't think it's. But that's very much my take on it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting for me because I'm sort of very pragmatic about what I do. I want to see the facts. I want to see the science. I want to see the logic. And more importantly, I want to see it work. And I've been that way because. When I started doing the doors and things, I quickly found out that a lot of things that have been said and are being taught and were being shown, not by my immediate instructors, but the martial arts world at large, a lot of those concepts actually turned out to be, I'm going to be kind and call it misinformation. And I found that I just wasn't getting this, I wasn't being able to make it work in a live environment, in a real environment. And I was being met with, well, either I'm not training enough, or I'm just not good enough. Either or either. And it's ironic because, at that point, I was probably, it's probably the fittest I've ever been. I was representing at a really high, pretty high level in competition. I'd reached a pretty high level in the martial arts that I was doing. So you couldn't really just put it down to that, because if I couldn't make it work, But then the other side of it is that it's very hard to dismiss something when you take, all the different people of history and all across the world. They've all reached similar conclusions. As you said, the Chinese have Qi, the Indians had their version of it, and so each different sort of people, they have their own kind of version of this key energy kind of thing. So I tend to look at it and say, well, there must be some truth to that. Otherwise, all these different people historically wouldn't have reached the same conclusions on different continents and things. But it's how that manifests into what we're doing. I quite like the way that you described it and said that, it's with the power lifter and it all comes together at that right moment. I'm not entirely convinced that anyone can shoot a chi ball, like that. I'm not entirely convinced on that. However, there might be somebody out there that can prove me wrong. But in the main, I'm not really sure that that's the case. However, then you start looking at things like sort of Reiki, things like that, and people talk about auras and things, and you can feel when somebody walks into a room, and this is where it gets interesting. There are certain people, they will walk into a room, they're in the room, the energy changes. So isn't that in some way a projection of key energy? Yeah,
quite possibly. And again, I suppose it's in instinct. That's probably we've got instincts. Hair in the back of it. You said from the door days, someone will walk down that street and something says to you, that person's not coming. I don't. You'll get that. Non-verbal communications, people get it, but it's those instincts you have. And I think is that energy working against each other, or is it just, for me, I think experience over time about just. Again, I don't necessarily think that would be aura. I think for me, it's just experience. So I've got friends who will walk into a pub, go straight to the bar, oblivious to what's going on, and for me, that's awareness, and it comes with everything, experience and developing yourself. I think it's more about being an expert. You need knowledge, you need sort of an element of skill, and you need experience to start to build up from, because you build from your knowledge base. The first time you do something, you have very little knowledge around it, you probably don't do it very well. You do it more, but towards the end of your door careers, I bet you got into probably less conflict because you were better at picking up the social cues, knowing ways of getting out of it. So someone come down like, sorry lads, members only club tonight. Probably wasn't, but you gave them that line, they turn around and walk away. You would know ways and you would build on that from your experience. And I think, so getting things wrong is something I think is a really key part. And again, back to Aikido world, it's very rare people get stuff wrong because it's so controlled and soft. You get it right more than you get it wrong, and even when you get it wrong slightly, people are a bit sometimes too compliant with it too, and you don't learn from that. Because for me, you learn more from getting something wrong than you do from getting it right. The industries are full of black box thinking. It's all about stuff. If you get, in the police force, we get something right, everyone's high five, do it, and just carry on business normal. Get something wrong, we'll sit and review it, which is good because that's where you'll get your learning and understanding. And back to that thing, for me, it's that experience of how interacting with people. Today, element, I was excited about doing this, but also a little nervous because we've never met. But straight away, within a couple of seconds, handshakes, meet the dog, meet yourself, all that sort of stuff. Straight away, it's actually the instincts there are right, this is going to be an all right session.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But to some degree, I could have ridden 200 miles over from the border and ended up in your manner in a bad place with someone who's had an agenda. I never think you had that, but it's that whole you build.
Oh, you never know. That's right.
Straight away, you always have that, and you probably had the same. You probably had a few thoughts about what's Martyn going to be like when he actually turns up, and hopefully, very quickly, the voice on the phone matches the person that sat with you.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think we're both from the same understanding, and that is that to grow, you've got to fail. Yeah. If you're in an environment where you only ever succeed, then that's a falsehood. That is a myth. It's a lie, And again, I don't like using the term lies, but unfortunately, sometimes that's the only real word that fits. And so, if I'm performing a technique against a compliant person over and over again, and I continually succeed with that, I am lying to myself as to the capability of that technique and my ability to actually apply that. And that's where that then becomes interesting, because if that's the only way you practice, you end up with this mindset that you have this ability that quite often isn't actually there.
Yeah.
And that's something that I find quite interesting. I mean, when we're talking about not just Aikido,
I've got to say, I've seen that. Lots of styles.
I was going to say, not just Aikido. I've seen that right across the board. I've seen that from everything from the real world too dangerous to train properly combatives guys, that would like poke you and you'll explode, right through then to very traditional guys and everything in between. Even sporting guys, they can be very, very good within their particular arena, but that arena, that environment, the skill base to be successful in that environment doesn't translate across necessarily to the outside world environment. But that's part of the conversation. That's part of the journey, if you will, and that's part of the learning thing. Because I can be really, really good at one thing and utterly useless at another. In fact, we'll find that out later on. Because what will happen later on is there will be things that I'm not very good at, and there will be things that you're not very good at, but then equally we'll have things that we're both very good at. That's part of it, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today, is because I want to look at the things that I'm not very good at. That's the whole point. That's how I learn. And so when we're talking about that, again, that brings us round to another question that I have, which again is a very sort of an interesting one, inflammatory almost, because there's this very real statement that O-sensei made that Atemi is 70% of Aikido, but yet I cannot find, and I don't mean this, Aikido world, please prove me wrong, send me links, right? I cannot find a single video, not one, not ever, not historically, not ever, of what I would class as high-level striking. And again, that's not me picking fault, because I'm not trying to do that. And I understand that you guys have set strikes that you use. And then when I see any kind of demonstration about, this is how you would defeat a boxer, this is how you defeat such and such, right? I'm never actually seeing anybody with any real skills being the attacker in this instance. So again, can you clarify that a little bit?
I mean, the percentage ranges from whichever book you read. I've seen it from 30% to 9%. So again, a big thing with Aikido, because O-sensei never left a legacy, he just kind of trained and did his own thing. What's been interpreted, the people saying, it's 70%, and if you said, pre going to Hawaii, he was doing this, and he's suddenly changed. So, I think the stat is about the big problem. And again, I tell you, one of my probably big issues with the modern training of Aikido is we do notional Atemi. What I mean by that is you come in with, even if you came in with a real world strike, I step forward and I'm going to strike you in the face as your attack's coming in. I never actually hit you. I either pull it short or your hand comes up, and it's very notional all the time. And we've done it with, I've got little strike pads out now, and actually when you try and hit someone hard, it changes your whole body, because actually you're able to land something with power, pace, precision, because they're the three things you need to make it effective. And actually the students are struggling because they're so used to thinking, I'll have done that, and of course I comply, my head goes back, and everyone goes, there's my Atemi. Yes, I'm applying a strike, but I'm not actually doing it with gusto. I'm not actually hitting the strike, I'm not actually hitting the pad, I'm not hitting the person. And again, it's the people that are studying Aikido don't have that natural violence, so they're teaching themselves, you'll throw a punch and I'm going to do that. And chances are they'll probably bounce off their head or not follow it through. And it just, it grates me. And I said, I put it out before, and there's probably 10, 15 people, you put it on a thread like a temi, and everyone will say, yes, I temi does Aikido. You're all right, who there puts pads out and actually hits and kicks pads? Because that's what you're going to do. You did a really great drill once I saw, which was basically you line your partner up and it's actually visualising, so you're going to hit, I'm going to hit him on that jaw, what's that going to look like? Because again, it's all very well going, I'm going to do my temi, but if you've never hit someone, again, I've asked in my class, I'm fortunate, I'm hitting one for a few years, all lawfully I should add as well. But some of people in my class have never hit anyone, never had that conflict, or if they had it in school 20 years ago. Again, in a way, that's good. I'm not saying it's good to get loads of fights, but again, it's experience. How do you know that you're going to actually punch be effective if you're not hitting, at the very least, pads and stuff to develop that temi?
So that leads me then to a question, because I'm sure there's going to be people watching this that don't study Aikido, and they are curious to when we talk about the temi and the types of strikes that go with that, because they are quite specific, aren't they?
They are.
Can you explain why they're the way they are?
The concept is they're taken from the sword world. Right. People say Aikido, it's based around the sort of samurai world, use of the sword. The attacks often mimic the sword work. The two big ones that we've got are what we call shomanuchi, which is basically a sword hand, vertical, comes straight down, centre line, as you would do if you were cutting a sword, straight down vertical. The second one is yokomanuchi, which is kind of like a neck scarf cut, so I'd be cutting at a slight angle across the neck. And the hands more or less mimic. Some people say it's a blade, some people say it's where you would be holding the blade, where you hold the hilt, kind of thing. The problem is, if you went to karate chop my head to the head, all I'd have to do is just literally keep my head there, because your hand is probably going to do a lot more damage to your hand than it is to my crown of my head. If you crack me on it, it would hurt me, but you'd probably break your hand in it. So it's an attack that doesn't really have much world relevance. I've never seen anyone walk up to someone and karate chop them straight down the middle of the head.
Can't say I have either. No.
So why? If it was a good attack, I've seen video. I mean, we used to do it with knives, tantos, and I said again, it's a rubbish attack. And then I've seen some videos of people, but again, it's not big. It's more like Navy SEAL down thrustings, similar to shomanuchi, but and the yokoman attack again. I've never seen anyone walk over and try and judo chop them into the side of the neck. Again, it can be. The Aikido world will say, "Oh, it's like the hook punch." Well, it's not like a hook punch, because
the angle is completely different. Yeah.
I could do that, and you block that very easily. Hook punches are hard, fast, and sharp. It's similar to a haymaker. That's probably the nearest we've got to a real one. But even then, it's still not got the same level of ferocity and power that a haymaker will have. And the
angle's still different. Yeah.
It's the nearest thing we've got.
So I'm finding it interesting, because if we take that statement, i.e. 70% of Aikido is a temi, and then we look at that and we go, right, well, so far we've talked about 2 strikes.
And the other ones are skis, punches. They're the attacks we've got. Go from our standard grade syllabus, you've got shomanuchi, yokomanuchi, and then your various skis. So chudan ski to the stomach, gedan ski.
Right, so just a direct straight punch.
Straight punches.
Yeah. So any uppercuts, any hooks, any elbows?
No elbows, no uppercuts. No one has ever taught me. There might be blue, but I've never seen any Aikido organisation teach elbows, teach knees. Okay. Right. We do a little bit of kicks, but it's very rare. And again, I've never seen many people actually teach kicks, especially like the most obvious kick is the old thigh blow. That's that's the most destructive kick. It's quick and easy. All the good styles that have taken that as the clothes. None of that is really cool.
So I'm not trying to be awkward here, right? So excuse me on this, guys, but this is why I end up getting in trouble with people, because I ask questions, I can't help it, right? So if we look at that statistic, 70% is a temi, right? Striking is temi. You've said essentially there are, let's call it 5.
Yeah.
Let's call it 5 at best. So by doing the math, then that would lead me to believe that you have maybe 20 other techniques in the Aikido arsenal to weigh up those numbers?
We've got a lot of defence stuff, but nothing.
Yeah, so that's my point. So my point is that actually that 70% figure is blatantly incorrect for today's practice. I'm not saying that it wasn't correct in Sensei's day, but for now, 5 strikes does not equate to 70%
people
system.
think the 70% of temi is your defensive responses.
Right, yeah, no, that makes more sense. Yeah.
And again, they do, because for me, as I said to you, I can't do Aikido on you whilst you're balanced, because for the greatest love in the world, I can crank on your hand or whatever, your elbow, whatever technique I'm trying to apply, Koda Gesh, Nikio, whatever it is, if you've got balance, you ain't going to move, and I'm just going to be trying to move you around. I've got to somehow take your balance to make you move. And this is where I think people say, well, that's where I do my atemi, and it's a start point for taking their balance, which can work, but again, it's all down to, do we do atemi properly? Because unless I'm actually learning to hit you, because it's actually quite hard. Hitting focus moves is hard. I mean, I've been a long time since I did it. I remember the videos, very early doors he sent to me, and we it was very rusty, and you gave some quite direct but needed feedback around actually. You need to know. You need to be moving off distance, moving in. There's so much stuff. It's hard. If you've not done it before, hitting pads is hard.
Yeah.
Hitting someone's head is even harder than hitting a pad. So boxers, you can box and do pad work all day long. Get into rings and sparring is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because you've got something that moves, doesn't move how you predict it wants to move.
Yeah.
We don't do that in Aikido. We don't hit pads. So how good is our actual atemi? And then we don't actually hit people with intent and actually respond to see how they move. Because actually, if I'm not hitting you with any power, I might do my atemi and just going to glance off your face. Your balance hasn't gone. I haven't got a route to my Aikido. So
that then leads me to another, because what I'm doing is I'm asking the questions from a non-Aikido perspective, because I see quite a lot of correlation within the techniques between the different systems. When you look at sort of Japanese jiu-jitsu, you look at a number of different things like that. There are similarities within that. It's the application. That's where it's sort of different. And so my next question on that would be, again, I think a very valid one with regards to what we're talking about, which is, if we look at those particular strikes, and we've already suggested that they are based on sword striking, and we go, okay, that might have been the enemy of 200 plus years ago, but that's almost certainly not the enemy of today. And so how do you translate what can be seen as a historic art, practicing historic application? How do you translate that into today's world and today's enemy? Is that possible to do that without distilling the art so much that it's no longer recognisable?
Well, I think the answer to that is going to be found out today, to some degree. Okay. But no, I mean, again, take back to the concepts, like talk about Aikido defence. Again, one of the things I want to talk about is actually being offensive with Aikido. I don't mean that in like offending people. I mean that is in why wait for an attack? Because a lot of Aikido is I'm waiting for your input. So I wait for your attack, I wait for your grab, whatever it is you're going to do. Of course, the flaw to that plan in my book is if I'm waiting for you to punch me and I get it wrong and you punch me, well, win to you, lose to me. And of course, if you do that a couple of times, night, I'm out of the game. Yeah. So actually, it's not always a good concept to wait for an attack.
Well, just a caveat on that, I only need to get you once if I get it right.
I'm sure that's okay. Most people, the punch, people get knocked out from punches you don't see or hear coming. So I think what you need to do is we need to look at the Aikido, because what I tend to do for Aikido is we blend. It's one of the things we talk about. So like you throw an attack in, and our energy like almost moves together and blends with it. Again, really nice concept. Does it have real world application? Well, if you throw a big haymaker, well actually, it can work. If you literally spin quick enough, you will launch that person. But that's for that scenario. Would it work if you throw a hook punch? Can I be quick enough to blend with that hook punch? Probably not. I'm fairly confident not, but we'll see from there. The other thing we talk about is entering, a rimi, we call that. And that's a big one for Aikido. Is that as you throw your punch, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to enter, so that the punch is almost on the outside. I've entered. I've taken your space and your sort of balance posture, so that you then can't operate. Again, great concept. Probably works like another martial arts.
They have that. That concept applies across the board. It's just the application of how they go about that.
The problem is, again, it's if you launch a flurry of attacks, am I quick enough to be able to get inside that and operate? Probably not.
Well, not just that, but if you've only ever practiced attacking from this, moving in and closing space from these kind of attacks, then that's going to really hamper you when somebody throws something from a different angle, from a different set of footwork, from a different movement, and so it's not going to make the training worthless.
No,
that's a bit strong. but it is going to make the application very difficult if somebody throws in a different way. So I mean that's where that sort of gets interesting.
We're talking about the defences, the blend, the irimi, the entering, and probably the third one we do a lot of is what we call the tenkan, which is basically a circular turn off. So if you're coming into me with your strike, whatever it is, it's that circular motion turning off to end up almost side by side or something like that.
So sorry, I got to ask then at that point again, because those principles apply in every martial art I've ever seen or tried. So not just ones that I've had a go at, you can see it in other arts as well. So I don't understand where the application isn't as effective or could be seen as not as effective. So I'm trying to get a handle on that. So the first one that you talked about was blending. Blending, right. Now blending is a really important one. Again, for the people that are outside of the Aikido world, that's something that they pick up on regularly, because the interpretation of blending for the majority outside of the Aikido world is that they are just throwing themselves into the technique. And there's definitely an element of truth of that. You know, I've had a number of people here over the years that have come from an Aikido background. There was one guy who was great. He had a black belt in Aikido, and he would throw himself into a lot of things. But he helped me to understand some of the reasons why. And when I tried to sort of chastise him for that, he was like, well, firstly, that's what we've trained. That's our response, which is good in the sense that if I was trying to apply something to you, then you could move away from that energy, and it's also good in the sense of it's avoiding injury, because again, let's be completely real about this. You know, if you apply a wrist lock with force and pressure, things are going to snap, and if I don't blend with that movement, then I'm not going to be practicing for very long. No. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have, is that it's done, but it's the reason why it's done. Yeah. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Again, we talk about the Ukemi blend on it. I mean, the thing is, as you said, it's striking the balance. You know, there should be enough resistance that I have to work for that technique. Because again, you know, if you're pushing me, you know, let's take a simple blend. You're pushing me to push me against the wall. If I push back against you, we're going to end up in a who's a stronger person wins that contest. Might be you, might be me, depending on who the person is you're conflicting with. Well, actually, and you said every other soul do. Well, actually, you don't fight energy like most of the cards. So you don't fight energy head on. What you try and do is work with it and take it in a direction it's weak. If you're pushing me in this direction, actually, if I turn you, you start spinning. You become weaker because your balance is spinning. So there's the blend. When we talk about taking techniques, you're right. If you resist fully and I keep applying that pressure on, at some point something gives between. And it'll probably be the smallest bone, just the weakest bone in the joint should be some little wrist joint or bone joint, something like that. So what you do is you then have to blend with the technique or take the technique to receive it. I think that is all very good. Where again we've fallen down a little bit is quite often people look too soon. So straight away, the moment I start bending your hand, you're then looking for that out because you know it's coming. Yeah. And again, it's that false training you're talking about. And I think this is kind of the problem with complicated arts. I don't think it's Aikido. Ultimately, if I'm trying to apply a wrist joint, it's a fairly complicated movement, or it can be, especially some of them. If you're fully resisting it, or you don't expect it, you'll get hurt. If you go with it, but go with it too much, you build me that falsehood. And I suppose it's one of the questions, and again, I don't think I'm going to have the answer to that, is how do you draw the line between the two to be actually, the technique's viable, like Nikyo, one of the ones which is like a sort of wristband. I've used very effectively once. Again, it's not great testimonial evidence, but I've used it and it worked really well because everything lined up. I saw it.
But I was going to say, that was the question. Did it work because you looked and hunted for that particular technique, or did it work because that was the energy that you was given and you just applied it in the moment because it was there?
I applied it in a way that you would never train it. So I was done in a different situation. It all lined up and it worked. And that's the key thing for, again, working outside of Aikido is very syllabus based, and that's for me is looking how can we look outside that syllabus to make it better, because that's, and I should add, again, we've been not negative about Aikido, but we're picking a lot of the strong points. I don't think Aikido is a great combative art. And what I mean by that is, if you said to me, right, we're going to you're going to challenge me to a fight and we're going to set up and it's going to be almost a predetermined fight, I don't think Aikido is always the best at dealing with that. And this is going to sound, where Aikido does work, it's almost you've got elements of unexpectedness. So actually, you know, if we're arguing and I can, you know, I can try and get something on before you do it. If it's a bit sucker, once the fight started and we're both, because like most conflicts I've seen happen is someone starts a fight, there's almost a little drawback period, and it sort of it's like the wave, isn't it? It sort of draws you out and then draws back in, and then most people who are fighters, their guards are up, their fight mentality's up, they go into what they've been training to do.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think Aikido is great in that area where actually, like, and I'm not saying I'd fight you in a suckery way, but if we were getting into conflict and it was building those early stages of it, you know, you start pushing, you know, that sort of stuff. You're not expecting a response from me. That's where Aikido has its sort of moment. But once you push me, you've dropped your guard, you're up, and you're starting to start sinking punches. I don't think Aikido is a great art at just running, which is why you probably don't see it in things like the MMA. Because I can see principles in there. We talk about, you know, an armbar I see an armbar as simply like Hiji Shims. We're applying pressure to an elbow in a direction it doesn't want to go. They just do it lying on their back, but you don't see it as an art where I'd walk in, which is why I've never seen anyone walk into the MMA in an Aikido days, or even the early days of UFC where actually you had individual styles. I mean, I remember UFC 1, you're probably old enough to remember the UFC 1 as well.
Oh yeah, I remember it very well.
And they were set styles, wasn't it? You had someone come in, I'm a kickboxer. Now, what you've evolved to is people have a bit of a hybrid of everything. The good people go, you know, I kick like a Thai boxer, nice and low. I've got fairly decent punches like a boxer. And if I get into a clinch, I'm like a BJJ guy, and I can kind of, they're your good fighters. They've taken what works for that world.
Yeah. Well, I think, personally for me, I think the critical point of that particular part of what you were saying was when you talked about applying Aikido, and you were saying that it was there in the moment, so you took it. And I think that is the crucial line between workable martial art, I think that's the best way for me to put it, workable martial arts and non-workable martial arts. And again, so what I mean by that is if you take something like boxing, wrestling, BJJ, if you take any of what I call live arts, you're practicing with resistance, you're practicing live rolls, you're practicing movement, and you're practicing putting on your technique from random positions and random setups, and so it's not specific. And that way then, that enhances your ability to apply the technique and the usability of the technique. Whereas quite often you'll find with some systems where they don't do that, that's where they sort of fall behind. It's not the technique itself, for my mind anyway, it's not the technique itself, because, you know, I fully agree with you. If you can apply Nico properly and it's on, that's going to make a difference. But what I will say is the opportunity to be able to apply that in the moment with a live opponent is going to be significantly less if you never practice against anything like a live opponent, and that's fundamental.
Unpredictability, I think, is a key. That's what you need. You know, it's that unpredictable moment with the person you're training with that you don't quite know what they're going to do. You've got to find the technique, not look for the technique. If that kind of makes
absolutely. It's what they call using the energy. So it's whatever energy you get given to you, you just go with that. So you're not hunting a specific technique or a specific way of doing things. You are literally just in the moment, and whatever energy is given to you, that's what you work with. That's the sort of essence of it. So any kind of grappling, any kind of rolling, any kind of stuff like that. I mean, the grappling that we do here, the rolling that we do here, that's live, that's in the moment, and it's very telling, because you can have a guy that can put on say an arm bar, just because we talked about those earlier. You can have a guy that can put on an arm bar perfectly well against a non-resisting opponent. The moment there's resistance and movement, they struggle to actually apply that technique, and that's because of the resistance and the movement. You know, so it's really interesting how that changes the dynamic of things. So with all that being said then, I mean, what we've done is we've basically agreed a number of different points. Basically that, O-Sensei's Aikido in that time and in that place is probably a different animal to what it is today, to a degree. Chinese whispers have sort of changed it a little bit in its interpretation, which is why different people have different viewpoints on it. We seem to be in agreement that the techniques themselves are valid. It's maybe the application, the way in, what have you, and that's something that can be worked across. And every art has that. That's a standard thing. One of the questions that I did have, and I think I touched on it earlier on, but again, it's just clarifying that, was how do you keep Aikido as Aikido, but bring it into, you know, a workable, usable system for the modern age?
Good question. My viewpoint would be it's evolving it. Not again. I wouldn't be keen to take stuff away from it. I think once you strip stuff from an art, I think you then start taking. You're not defacing, but you're changing what was there. I think the key thing, as you said, is recognising where are the gaps now, and actually what is better to do. Is it better to cash it in? I mean, there are some people who've studied Aikido and have decided they've cashed it all in. Rokas is the famous one. Very nice chap. It was his call. You know, he decided after 20 years of Aikido, it wasn't for him, and he's now taking the BJJ world and is much happier with that route. So that's one option for people. I think the main thing is that honesty at the start. What is it you're selling, and what is it you want to sell to the people? If someone says, I just want to learn traditional Aikido, I like the movements, I like the performance aspect of it, I like all the stuff that comes with that. Because again, I love watching a demo from the TCOs of this world. They put on, and there's a skill in that demo.
Absolutely,
it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Better than I'll ever be and ever could aspire to be. But for me, that's not what I want from Aikido. I think it's honesty of what is it you want as a student or as a teacher to leave. If you just want to teach people in Aikido, this is traditional Aikido, I'm happy with it is, the student knows what they're getting, they're happy with it is, I don't see that as an issue. It's for me, it's the people that say, actually, I want that bit more. And I think the key thing to do is look at what is the world you're training for. It's probably, what is it you want from Aikido. If people say, I want to learn martial arts because I want that self-defense element, I would say, well, what actually is it you want? Knife crime, machete crime, all this sort of stuff. Again, working in the stats of it, it's very rare, as a member of the public, you're probably going to be subject to a knife and machete attack. The stats will probably know, the Daily Mail will tell you a different story. Actually, most people go about their daily business without any contact with that, and will probably go through the rest of their lives without any contact from that. A lot of these things happen within the environment you're in. If you were involved in criminality, then actually you probably might want to invest in knife defence and machete defences, because that's probably where you're going to come across it. As a member of the public, you're probably not. I mean, one of the things I've done before, we've done sat down and we've done driver drills. The most conflict I get most days is road rage.
Yes.
We all do it. We've got this mentality that we get into a car, you can be the nicest guy, but I guarantee if someone cuts you up, you're probably straight on the horn being like, he's just cut me up. And it's bizarre. We all do it. It's a human nature thing. We're safe in our little box. Someone inflicts,
Yes, I have a word.
So you're not safe for camera, can you?
yeah, warning people, small children, close your ears now, right? I tend to just call them cockwombles and get on with my day.
It's amazing how many people, nice civilised people will have a real moment behind that car.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I talk about displaced aggression quite a lot, and that's a very common version of that. So basically, it's not the incident that they're annoyed about; it's something else. Whether that be unpaid bill or a row with a wife or a rubbish job or whatever frustrations are in their world. That's just almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. So that's the thing that sets them off, and that's displaced aggression is responsible for a heck of a lot of problems in the world. So so you're right with regards to things like the road rage and stuff. But then, so if we're looking at, how can we sort of apply it to the modern world? From what I'm reading between the lines of what you just said, what you're actually saying is, well, rather than try and turn it into something it's not, would it be better to just be a little more honest about what it is?
We say honesty is the key thing. That's got to be, I've got to think, actually, if you start swinging punches, can I honestly put a defence up to it?
Yeah.
At the moment, from a pure Aikido defence, I think I would struggle.
Yeah.
What I would probably redivert to is more the stuff from the boxing days, the basic guards, doing that sort of stuff, looking to close your arms down, to stick my hand into your armpit or something like that, would stop the attack propagating. Again, now what I can say is actually, can we turn the Aikido principles into that? So actually, if I get into that, can I then start, because chances are, if you start swinging punches, I get inside of it, stopping you swinging punches, what we're then going to do is going to be a bit of a force battle. Well, actually, then can we look to put Aikido? Can I then Tenkan keep turning you around again? Principles that are in all sorts of, Aikido doesn't have the monopoly on them. But actually, at that point, we can use the Aikido principles. What we're doing with it is examining and being honest about how we're getting there. So I think that the big thing we're probably coming to is the honesty level of the attacks that we give. Might be 100%, but they're not realistic, and it's a single blow, left extended, and I'm slightly off balance to make it work, well, let's make those attacks more genuine.
Yeah, yeah.
And then let's be honest about actually, can we get into position? Because for me, it's all about getting you off balance. Once I've got you into a position where your balance is gone, I've got a chance of making my Aikido work. And the other thing is what is self-defense? For me, self-defense is just tipping the odds of a fight. You know, you can get into a fight with anyone. Some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. You're never going to win every fight. You're never going to be indestructible. All you're doing is tipping the odds into your favour, and the better you can tip those odds, the better you'll come out of that fight.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's for me. That's what martial arts does.
Yeah.
Is I always say to people, if you attack me and I've done nothing, you're going to hit me, I'm going to fall over. If I do some martial arts, you attack me, it doesn't quite work, you hit me, I fall over. Well, I'm kind of really no worse off than I was in the first place. You attack me, I do something and it stops you getting hurt. That's start of success. I'm not going to say I'm going to walk out of every fight, but I'm tipping the odds more in my balance every time, and that's all we can hope for. And I think it's a realistic thing. You know, when you tell people, you know, you get these people. I know you've seen them on the pages where you get a bit angry at them when they're saying, "Oh, you know, stop my daughter being kidnapped," and real aggressive. "Oh, we can turn you so that will never happen." Well, you can never say that. All you can do is
people do.
Yeah, and people buy it, sadly.
Unfortunately, yes.
All you can be is honest. Actually, we can improve your odds slightly, because that's all that's going to happen. Yeah. You've probably seen people bigger and stronger, tough people get smacked and go down. It happens. No one is indestructible, and all you can do is just try and improve yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the key. Coming here today is going to be about bringing that world. Actually, can we improve ways of entering into Aikido techniques that might give me a bit more of a chance of success? That's what it's about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've got one more question that I'm going to ask. So, given the conversation then about all that sort of thing, right, and I sort of agree with that in principle, a question that springs to mind again is, why is it that almost every other art in existence can admit where it's weak? So, as an example, I know gyms up and down the country, they have a BJJ coach that teaches BJJ, they've got a striking coach that teaches striking, they've got a wrestling coach that teaches stand-up grappling, you know, and they've got a Thai coach, and they've got, you know, and they've got these different things, right? And they freely admit that this is good at this, this is good at this, this is good at this, but they all have things they're not so good at. So I see it in almost every other art, even in some of the arts that they claim to have the answer to everything. Even with those, I quite often find that what they've done is they've outsourced some of that information. I mean, a very good example of that is Krav Maga in recent years. That started off when I first started looking at Krav Maga, you know, all that time ago. It was very raw, it was very small, it didn't have a great deal to it, and it was more about attitude than it was about sort of techniques per se. But then, as the UFC came on board, as grappling became to the fore, they started applying all these sort of techniques to their system, and they started bringing in, as did a lot of other things, by the way. Suddenly there was secret bunkai and katas that nobody knew about before, that was actually grappling moves, you know, that kind of thing, which is, I'm taking the mickey a little bit, but what I mean is, you know, most other arts, they have almost changed with the times to a degree, and they've sort of moulded a little bit as to where they need to go with modern times. From what I can see, and I might be wrong, and if I am, please say so, but from what I can see, I don't see that within Aikido. There's no acknowledgement that there are weaknesses to the system.
I think you're probably fairly right, which is why there's not many of us doing what myself, Tristan, Ian, Lenny, and people like that, to some degree, of actually not looking for outside help isn't necessarily the right word, but looking outside of what is within our world to say actually what can be brought in. Yes.
Well, again, it comes down to, you know, nobody's saying that right or wrong. What we're doing is it comes back down to what we talked about, which is the application. And if you can, you know, if you can outsource some knowledge of somebody that's very specialist in that area to bring back to within what you do and fit that within the Aikido system, then that seems to be logical to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is purely my opinion and guesswork. I mean, I think it's an element of probably ignorance to some degree. People, not many people seem to actually apply their. Again, you get a lot of people online everyone online tells you about how they've applied their Aikido, and anecdotal evidence is great. However, it's just that, it's anecdotal evidence. People, I don't think, push themselves outside there, and so therefore they never live outside their comfort zone. If you're never outside your comfort zone, why would you feel the need to go outside your comfort zone?
Yeah.
You know, if you're a middle-aged person studying Aikido, which most people are, probably fairly professional jobs, it tends to attract those bored people. Actually, you're probably not getting into very conflict very often. So actually, where's the step outside your real world to say, oh, it hasn't worked? You know, they're not probably going to get into many fights. Therefore, they're not going to have to test it. They're not going to be going to the MMA rings. They're not going to come and spend time with people who say, actually, I'll give you a couple of decent blows and see how you get on. And then most of their schools won't teach that. So ignorance is it's like the Matrix, the red pill. They're in that little Matrix world, and actually, why would you step outside of it unless you know there's a world outside there?
Yeah. Again, that's not just certain fractions of Aikido. That's certain fractions of every martial art in existence.
And I was saying, there's control. You know, there's probably organisations don't want to lose that because again. Can you imagine if someone very high up in the Aikido world came out and said, actually, we've got some massive holes here, we need to fill them?
Yeah.
That would probably shake the pillars of that martial art. Now, it'd be a brave person to do it. I'd love for them to do it. And again, I would love for some of the big Aikido people to do, like, you know, the TCAs, people who do the big international demos, do something different. Go, actually, let's step outside the world and let's start bringing in.
But I think it's fair to say that there are people in this world that are doing similar things already, and you've got there are a number of people out there that are saying, well, actually, you know, what I'm saying is fundamentally I'm very, very, you know, firm believer in my art and what I do, but I'm quite happy to look outside to see ways to improve it. I mean, Ian Abernathy's a good example of that.
Follow him. I mean, again, I follow him. He's a great. I'm not a karate person. I've never done karate, but I like what he's done. And we've got some of the guy, the Bunkai bastards who are on some of the pages. They've sort of followed very similar suit. Yeah, I think that's great. 2-3 years ago, there was no one doing this with Aikido. Literally, there was just. I think there is a very slow revolution of people starting to say, actually, there are a few of us getting together and saying, actually, we can be better. We can make our art better. We can add to it and make it a bit more practical. I've no delusion that we're not going to turn Aikido into some formidable art that in 10 years' time you're going to see people going, it's the next big thing and all that stuff. I don't think it'll ever be there, but I think it can be better than where we are at the moment. Now that probably upset loads of people because people think, again, who am I to mess with something that's perfect? Again, it's for me. This is quite selfish. This is for me.
No, I'm just going to clarify on this, right? Because I think this is a very important point. Because a couple of times you've been very sort of self-effacing, and you've been, well, who am I to ask these questions, right? I would say, as somebody that's trained in a number of different martial arts over the years, as somebody that's worked in a frontline role that deals with very, very violent people in all different guises, I'd say that gives you an authority to question far more than most. I tend to listen to people that have been there, done it, got the t-shirt, if you like, rather than somebody who's gone through an organisation and graded up and up and up, and have given themselves this perception of authority, but haven't actually got any real authority on the subjects of violence. So you know, I would actually, you know, I give you an authority that is well deserved. It's not, you know, you don't have to try and put a caveat on that.
It's back to that honesty. I keep coming back to it. I hope it's not a boring video because I keep saying it, but it's a reflection. What is it that I want from my Aikido? What is it that I want? And if other people can learn from it and go along the ride and get something from it, fine. If people look and go, it's not for me, that's not what I want to do. I mean, there's people that don't like. The Monday class that I run, we do see stuff. Last week we had people lying on the back, and it was standing over with a sort of kickback, and it was right. You have to fight your way off the floor. And then once you stand up, just drop the bag, and it was just they had a head guard on. It was right. You're just going to literally. It was just like a hammer beating down on them, and they had to just get. And any Aikido, I don't care. Just get something. And most of it ended up with them just being literally manhandled and thrown. But it was a good little drill. Some people don't like that. It's not the world they want to live in. That's fine. I said, as long as you're honest about what it is you want to learn and what it is you want to sell. For me, that's and for me, this is what I want to just open my horizon a little bit. My old Sifu used to say, your mind's like a parachute. It's only going to work when it's open.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if it's not open, if it's closed off to ideas, you know, we'll cover stuff later. It might be there's stuff there that I like and take away. It might be the stuff that I go, I've tried it, and it's not me. It doesn't work. I can't make it work. I've learned something by learning that it doesn't work, and I can park it and never have to worry about it again. But you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's for me. That's it.
Okay, guys. So on that note. what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually get on the mats and we're going to work through some stuff. We're going to try some things. We're going to have a mess about. So we'll talk more about that before we get into that. But just to let you know, guys, that that's coming. So stick around for that, and we hope you enjoy it.